Hey, hi everyone, and welcome to today's monthly update. So obviously into the new financial year in terms of July 2023. So like always, today's session will be recorded. So if you do miss any parts or want to share it with your colleagues, it will link to recording will be sent to all attendees or will be available on BGL's YouTube channel. If you do have any questions, we'd like to hear any questions you do have, please enter them in the Q&A panel found in your Zoom panel, depending on what device you're running this off. So like most of this year, the first section I'll be performing a BGL update. We've also got Aaron Dunn, CEO and co-founder of Smarter SMSF, joining us and going to give us a SMSF update. So welcome, Aaron.
Thank you, Javen.
So, and as I mentioned, Aaron and I will then at the end of the session, happy to take any questions that we can and try and get through as many as possible. So enter any questions you do have there in the Q&A panel and we'll get to them towards the end.
Yep.
So let's jump now into the BGL update. So since I last presented the monthly webinar, we've had two different updates that have been deployed. They're 15th of June and 6th of July. And our next update's towards the end of the month, which is scheduled there for the 27th of July. So first couple of things we'll look at there is around Simple Invest. So Simple Invest 360, since again last presented, now supports a 2023 trust tax return and 2023 company tax return. So jumping across there into Simple Fund, Simple Invest. So we'll select a discretionary trust. So if anyone hasn't seen this before, very similar to Simple Fund, the period compliance screen, very similar to the credit entry screen, generates the tax position and pre-fills everything that's required there for the tax return. So if I generate there in terms of the information, so generate now the information there for profit distribution, you'll have the relevant, obviously, unit holders or beneficiaries, which will just be displayed. The ability there at year end to either allocate income on a amount basis or percentage basis. So I'm just going to move through this quickly. And you can autofill everything for tax components for the tax return, either again by the same percentages, or you can cater that on an individual basis. So like Simple Fund 360, everything in terms of the trust tax return is pre-filled and entered through. Any validations will be displayed there on screen, and there's ability to lodge both the trust tax return and company tax return through to the ATO. Next two items that we've done is around into entity journals now. We support for companies and consolidated reporting. So again, jumping back into Simple Invest, I'm just going to now switch entities. Okay, so very similar there for my company that I have there. I'm just going to start the year-end workflow. Okay, calculate the period earnings. Okay, and then very similar, I'll just reshuffle an amount in for year-end. So we're going to pay a dividend for that particular class there of shares. Okay, and when we do that and it calculates period, what the system does is very similar to the option we have there for trust. It looks at if any of the shareholders are actually entities within Simple Fund 360 or Simple Invest 360. So in this particular case, one of the shareholders is an SMSF within the same system there. And you'll have the ability there to automatically create the transactions, so the dividend transactions, now based on the information that we've calculated. So I can go there to post journals. Okay, and we're going now to view. You'll see that it's automatically created the dividend transaction and the receivable account there. Okay, so the other one there is around consolidated reporting. So with our consolidated reporting, if I just select one of the groups, we've made some improvements there. So again, just probably going backwards, anyone who hasn't looked at consolidated reporting before, it provides the ability to grab multiple portfolios across Simple Fund and Simple Invest 360, and obviously, as the name suggests, produce the consolidated reports based on assets, investments, performance, and tax information. So across there, what we've done now is several improvements. So there's a couple of new graphs that have been added. But the most noticeable one is for something like the interentity journals, where an actual payment is recorded across multiple entities within the group. They won't be double counted anymore, where previously that information may have been double counted for especially things around performance. So you will note that the improvements there have come across the board. There is the ability to add some additional also customized in terms of selecting some individual assets and whether to include those as well. So you'll see a whole bunch of different little improvements there. Okay, so for now, for all three products, I suppose all three returns, so the SMSF return, the trust tax return, and company tax return, they're all supporting electronic lodgement. So that was opened up there in the last week of June. So everything there that can be done needs to be done. What we've also added to is the ability to lodge 2024 wind-ups for SMSFs as well. So you will see those. If for any reason you've created entries for an SMSF prior to 30th of June, you just need to reverse and recreate to make sure the correct stationery is being used. If you are finding it for some reason it is using the previous stationery, it just might be a timing issue of when you actually created entries. Okay, so moving across some financial year end changes. So all the pension dashboards have now been updated, all pension reports, and obviously around the eligibility for non-concessional contributions in terms of bring forward and the increases to the transfer balance cap. So obviously with the pension dashboards and reports, all the rates have just been, I suppose, updated or double checked that it is reverting now back to the standard rate, as the COVID 50% reduction has now ended. For TBAR, all our dashboards and alerts and various things have been updated, obviously, from 1st of July 23 to reflect quarterly reporting. Aaron is going to explain a little bit more around the quarterly reporting changes during his section as well, as we go through and have a look at that. If I jump back into Simple Fund 360, I'll go and select particular fund. Okay, and just a reminder too that we do have the TBAR cap summary that is available there. So that TBAR cap summary does allow you to download your entire client list and what's the effect of the indexation at 1st of July 23. So if you haven't seen that before, that summary is available there. And as mentioned, all the dashboards have been updated. Okay, so SuperStream. So as we've sort of covered for most of this year, obviously Australia Post is no longer supported, and all SMSFs that have been updated, we've now automatically transferred across to MXC, as we had to deregister them off Australia Post. We do have a list of the funds that were automatically updated. So if you are after that list for your firm, please either contact BG or your account manager, and we can provide that list through to you. In the last update, what we've also added is some new checklists there for rollover requests and release authorities. So let's jump across and quickly have a look at that. So if we go there to the SuperStream dashboard, we'll have a look at this one here. So go there to the rolling request and go through and to the bottom there and when we submit it. So we've got new on-screen checklists that will be generated. These on-screen checklists will just obviously I suppose, ask you to confirm, have all these things been done to not delay the rollover from occurring. So obviously it's just obviously standard information that is displayed there. We do customize it slightly based on the particular fund and the person who is rolling it out. And obviously all the items there in blue, they're in terms of, say, checking the compliance status, or a list of the eligible ESA providers are hyperlinks and can be clicked on there as well. Okay, so into reports. So this report, I've just done by PowerPoint, just to give me a more realistic example there. But a particular report that we've added there is the bank feed confirmation. So this was requested by a lot of auditors who would like to sort of see, I suppose, as part of their checks, they're looking in terms of the bank feeds, have any additional transactions being added manually? When did the feeds start? Have any transactions been modified or changed? So this particular report would be extremely useful there for the auditors. So as you can see there on the top left, it contains the feed start date. So the auditors can see, did the feed occur for the entire financial year, or did it start partway through the financial year? There'll be a summary in the top right to show, does everything, all the transactions and balances equal that was provided by the bank themselves? On the left-hand side, what you'll see there, the very first column there is the feed source. So was the transaction coming through a data feed, or was it manually entered? And manual entry will consider anything from an actual manually added individual transaction, CSV imports, using smart docs, etc. Bank feed essentially is those that have come directly from the bank themselves. The ledger data section, as you'd expect, is the actual transactions that you see there on the transaction screen, or you say general ledger reports. So that'll have obviously the relevant information there. And on the right-hand side there, what you'll see is the transactions and balances that we've actually received there for the bank themselves. So that the information there under the bank fee data cannot be modified by any user. So that's obviously the raw transactions and raw information that we do receive. And if there's any variance, as you can see in my example there, the variance will be highlighted and the amount will be displayed there. What we've also added, so I've got the wrong name there, is a new holding account report there as well. So again, this was requested by a lot of firms trying to reconcile to sort of wraps and platforms that had various portfolios within them as well. So the real benefit of this is actually showing all the investments in the fund, the actual portfolio code that we actually receive from the actual wrapper platform, and the holding ID, which you can be seeing there in column G. So that can be obviously generated in addition, I suppose, and knowing has the feed been set up, and obviously from reconciliation purposes there as well. Okay, so a couple other reports there. So we've got the rollover declaration, and we've done some changes there to the general ledger. So let's jump across to that. Let's close this one out. I'm just going to switch funds. Okay, so if we go to the report screen. So the first report we've added there is the rollover declaration. So again, a lot of auditors requesting this. Just generate there. It'll display the information, I guess, relevant there with the rollover, and it's a confirmation that everything was done and compliant with the SuperStream standards and the SIS regulations. In terms of there, you can obviously, like most of our reports, customize them to a template to your liking. The other change we've made is around the general ledger. So if I switch across there to the general ledger report, remove that one. So under settings now, you have the option there to display unmatched transactions as well. So you can actually obviously generate that general ledger. That will actually display as you would suggest, just the uncoded transactions. So that could be provided there across to either obviously an advisor or the actual client themselves to provide more information. Obviously, this particular fund's got a lot there. The other option you do have as well, if you're going back here, is you can go to the account view. So at the very top there, click on the X icon, and on a very similar basis, it will show a live trial balance, and you click down on the bank data clearing account, and you have the ability there to download it to Excel. So just giving you an alternative view as well, and obviously from that Excel view, you can obviously send that through as a relevant file as well. So you've got a couple of different options there of sending those uncoded transactions there outside of Simple Fund 360. Our next integration we over there is around property valuations, and this new one is with DuroTax. So I'll jump across there to the property console. So you'll find this on both the investment security list and the property dashboard. So I'll jump there to the property dashboard, and the third button there from the right, you'll see Durotax property valuations. So Durotax offer a few different things. So as you can see there on screen, you can order depreciation reports through them, and they offer property valuations for both residential and commercial properties. So they're obviously a one-stop shop for providing all various services. Obviously the relevant fees, etc., they will provide through. You just need to obviously click on the link, fill out the form, and they will provide you with the relevant quotes, depending on the type of property, location, and date of the valuation that you request. And obviously they go through. We will also, so obviously this is in addition to the existing integrations we have there, or partners we have there with Property Pricer and CoreLogic, and then obviously we'll be adding another one shortly, who offers both commercial properties and rural properties. So we're obviously just providing breadth of choice there, and you've got a lot of different options there available there on the property dashboard. Okay, so work papers. So we've added two things there. So there's a new note, matter for attention, and we've got work paper notification events. So let's jump back and have a look at those. So if I go, just going to switch funds again. Okay, so if I go to the work papers. Okay, so by default, any notes that we have, so an example might be this one here. I've got the matter for attention partner. The auditor with the read-only view is not able to view any notes that are basically something there. Obviously, we treat them as private in nature, and they can't view those particular ones. So what we've added now is the ability, I might go down and select one of these, is the ability to add a note that the auditor can view. So you've got their matter for attention auditor. So it could be something there that you obviously want them to see. So I'm just going to put something based there. So that particular note there will be obviously available to all users, as well as the actual auditor there as well. And then that will include also on our API as well. So a lot of the partners that do read our work papers through the API, we're able to grab that and hopefully bring that into their applications as well. The other one there is work paper notification events. So if I jump back, so obviously, those using work papers will be well aware, you're able to send email events there to the auditor if they're an actual user, the reviewer and preparer, as you can see there on screen. So since our last updates push out, we're now capturing these events and logging them through, and you're able to view a history of what's actually taken place for that particular financial year there on screen. So just for those, if you missed it there under the notify menu, it's available there under notification events. Okay, so that's all the features that I'm going to cover today. So I'll pass over to Aaron.
All good. Thank you, Jeevan. All right. Thanks, everyone, and welcome to today's, I guess, second part of the session where Jeevan usually gets me to come along and provide a bit of a technical update, I guess, in terms of what has been happening within the SMSF sector, but equally in respect to what we've been working on with the Smarter SMSF platform, and in particular, the work that we do to integrate with Simple Fund 360. So in respect to today's session, I think what I want to ultimately focus on here is to address the changes that we are seeing from the 1st of July 2023. And as Jeevan showed throughout his session today, we do see now a permanent change from the 1st of July where all self-managed super funds are required to report all events on a quarterly basis. So you may have had clients that were previously having to report by no later than the due date of the SMSF annual return. Now, that wasn't a straight 15 May every year. That may have been 31 October, it may have been the 28th of Feb, or it may have been that May or / June due date. All of those funds now are required to move into the same system as those that previously had a TSB threshold where a member had a balance of $1 million or more. So the previous rules to the 30th of June was that $1 million threshold. So where we had a pension that started, but we had any member with a TSB of $1 million or more, then we were permanently locked into that quarterly reporting framework. If you didn't fit into that and we had an income stream that started and all members were under $1 million, then we had the opportunity to simply lodge those as and when the tax return was due each and every year. So that is now finished. And in essence, as I said, we have the quarterly obligation that is relevant for all self-managed super funds. And the only exception that exists in respect to that change is, of course, for commutation arrangements where there's an excess transfer balance determination. There is no change to that. We have our 10-day time frame there, and also around commutation authorities, which is in essence due by the legislated date that exists on the actual notice. Now, why is the ATO making this change? Well, a lot of it all comes down to the fact that we want to see more up-to-date and accurate information. We now have the large majority of the SMSF industry actually now inside cloud-based computing. So therefore, the ability for the use of data feeds and all the great stuff that you're seeing in these sessions from Simple Fund 360 enable us to keep this data up to date and therefore give us more timely and accurate information. But the big change that should be aware of is this transitional period that exists. So if you have clients that have transfer balance account events that have occurred in the last financial year, you don't actually have until the due date of the SMSF annual return. In fact, the latest that information can be lodged is the 28th of October. So in essence, 1 July 2023 is a hard date in which the quarterly reporting framework operates. So you can see in my slide here where we have an event that may have occurred in, say, the 1st of September 2022, and then has occurred again sort of before we get to the end of March 2023. Both of those events ordinarily would have been due by no later than the due date of that SMSF annual return. However, those events must now be reported by no later than the 28th of October. And therefore, any events that we might have, say we started a pension on the 1st of July, that event also needs to be reported 28 days after the end of the quarter. So that, again, doesn't have any impact on those clients that we've already made that change for on a quarterly basis, or even where we see firms that have just decided to apply that policy anyway. But it does have an impact for those of you that really have lined this up and got that information lodged on an annual basis, because that has changed and you now need to make sure you do it 28 days after the end of the quarter. So the big challenge, I guess, that comes from this is the fact that we have pensions that start on the 1st of July. And this is one of the most common questions that we get, because it's like, well, what happens if we don't know what the account balance is? And if you've been to any of these sessions recently where I've presented with Jeevan, we've spoken about some of the requirements about pensions and the fact that some of our documents, in particular the pension commencements that we have on our platform, now allows you to deal with this multi-step process where you can start a balance and document the decision to commence the pension with an unknown balance and then confirm that balance at a later point in time. So that's great in terms of what the outcome may be there, but you might not be in a position to get the work done until, say, the 1st of December. So what do you do? Do we go and backdate? And do we use the benefit of what I call hindsight, because we never backdate documents? That's right, Jeevan. What we want to ensure that we do is we are naturally acknowledging that original decision to start the pension. But if we don't know the value, we either need to say, well, we're not going to start the pension until the 1st of December once we've got the accounts up to date, and therefore our due date becomes the 28th of January, or we need to utilise a different mechanism to come up with the valuation. Okay, and that different mechanism is actually set out within the ATO's guidance around the transfer balance account reporting requirements. And as Jeevan touched on, that cessation of the temporary 50% minimum has kicked in. So you need to be aware of that change and what impact that might have on your clients as well. So let's go and try and understand this a bit further, because the valuation guidelines around SMSFs tells us what we can do in this instance. Because where an income stream commences partway through an income year, we need to continue to use the valuation guidelines, i.e. market value on the commencement date of a pension using that objective and supportable data. So many of you will look at actually getting the accounts up to date, and you'll run a create entries at that point in time to allow you to determine that value, and relying therefore on the data feeds and getting that stuff in is naturally going to be the best way to do it, but it's not the only way to do it. I did see some questions coming through, not necessarily in respect to this issue, but about the fact that, well, what happens if we haven't got valuations up to date? What do we actually do? And what the ATO says is that you can use a reasonable estimate here. That reasonable estimate of the value of the account balance can be used when we're starting a pension throughout the year. And they go on further to actually say that it's accepted that a reasonable estimate of the account balance can be used when calculating the value of a pension for that transfer balance cap purposes where it commences on 1 July, but we don't have the ability to determine the value, i.e. commence or complete the accounts of the fund before the 28th of October. So it might be because of tax statements, it might be just from a workflow point of view, and noting that we actually have the obligation to report by that point in time. Okay, so what we now then need to do is we need to say to ourselves, well, we need to use our rationed and reasonable process, so our reasonable estimate to support that particular value. And on the basis that we use that value, that estimated value, that is an acceptable form. When we think about APRA-regulated funds, they don't have all the accounts ready to go and finished on the 1st of July. They're waiting for statements and other things, but they're using an estimate, and that estimate is sufficient for what we're looking to do here. And what, again, the ATO made clear here is, in addition to using the estimate, that estimate is not only enabled for the purposes of your pension documents to be acceptable, as long as we've used that rationed and reasonable process to come to that calculation, but it is also acceptable for the purposes of the transfer balance account reporting. So therefore, if the number that we come up with is $1.52 million, well, we can use that for the purposes of our pension documentation, and we can use that for the purposes of our transfer balance account reporting as well. Now, if the value comes out at $1.523 million, the ATO is not concerned with having to do a cancellation and a reissuing of that notice. Okay, they are accepting that you use that reasonable estimate to come up with that position. The only time that we will then need to use the actual figure rather than the estimated figure is when we use our exempt current pension income claim. So our opening balance in that instance will be the 1.523 as I was referencing, rather than the $1.52 million. Okay, so if you are confronting that challenge, I guess, with a 1 July start date, you can use that reasonable estimate to come up with the valuation that you need. Now, if the balance came out materially different and you wanted to make an adjustment to it, then, of course, as I said before, you can cancel that T-bar assessment or report and then reissue that, and the ATO will naturally update those changes. Now, with this change, the ATO hasn't stated anything about their change in approach. Now, I'm not sure whether any of you have ever seen a failure to lodge notice yet in respect to a transfer balance account report not being lodged on time. but these rules do apply to the lodgement of TBAR events. So if we do not lodge these on time, we do have a risk being presented to the trustees of the fund for the failure to lodge penalties to apply. And we have seen from the 1st of July an increase to $313. So only 12 months ago, the penalty rate was $222. We saw in the budget in October last year with Labor increase it from $222 to $275, and we've seen a further increase now from $275 to $313. So 40% increase. So in that instance, a failure to lodge on time, if it is 5 months or more late, then that maximum penalty can be as high as $1,565 per event. So if you're doing a transition to retire, if you're doing a pension reboot, for example, an account-based pension where you might be commuting and you might be restarting the pension because of contribution strategies and the like, you're now looking at potentially $3,000 of costs there as well. So that to me is a really important step to be aware of in respect to what you're going to be doing with the payment of the pensions as well. So from that point of view, I really want to make sure in your own mind that you're being really clear on what you're doing with your pensions on the 1st of July, because it's the risk that you end up with a situation whereby the clients could have a failure to lodge. So therefore, are you going to use that reasonable estimate process, or are you actually going to go through and ultimately do the estimate or get that changed, or get the pension started, I should say, being deferred? The other couple of things, I guess, from a Smarter SMSF point of view, there have been a range of changes. And as Jeevan pointed out throughout the session today, we think about the changes to the minimum pension relief. We've seen changes around the LRBA safe harbour, for example, as well. We've made some changes across our trust deed. We've seen a range of recent case laws, even beyond the recent Hill and Zuda decision of last year, where we've decided to make some changes around the payment of death benefits, and in particular death benefit nominations. You should also be looking for, within your deeds, changes now around the technology neutrality laws. So what can be signed in an electronic form and what can't be signed in an electronic form. So what we've been doing, given that we've been involved in discussions with Treasury around these technology neutrality laws, we have embedded into our deed what we call the global universal model that Treasury is looking to adopt. It is now included within the Corporations Act. Doesn't apply in its entirety yet to the Corporations Act, but shortly will once the bill is finalised in the Senate. But in essence, what you can do now is have certain documents, such as deeds, for example, but documents now that can be done within the rules of the fund, where that technology neutrality can be applied, such as the case here, then things like pension documents and the like, and including DBNs, because of course our DBNs must follow the rules of the fund. Those sort of things can actually be signed electronically. If you are looking at DBNs, you would need to factor in some of the witnessing requirements that may exist on a state-by-state level. We've also done the same in our company constitution. We've also included some updates around our consents to act with the director ID requirements and the like. Our ABN TFN integration is now live and available within Simple Fund 360. So the document integration that is available within Simple Fund. So Jeevan, I might get you to go back after and maybe show people where they can actually order the documents. But in essence, that ABN TFN can be applied. From there, I touched on our create pension documents with that unknown balance as well. And it does allow you in that pension ordering process to choose whether you want to have that election applied to that income stream for any amounts that are above the minimum to be taken from either the accumulation account or from the actual commutation of an income stream as well. There's a number of minor bugs and fixes and stuff that all go across 30 June changes each and every year. And we've got a range of updates. We provide a fairly comprehensive review of that that you can see the link on there, which you'll get the slides after this. And we are running a webinar tomorrow for those of you that may want to attend, where we go through a lot of these changes in much more detail to help you understand what those changes from the 1st of July are all about. So, Jeevan, I think that is pretty much it for me in respect to what's been updated. I think that pension change from a T-bar point of view. Yep, so the last thing here, just before I do mention that, so one of those, and I did touch on this previously, is that when you do order documents through us, we are taking the data, I guess, from a workflow point of view. So you can see there, when you're doing company incorporations and new SMSFs, you're naturally posting that data back into your SMSF software, but using that data, of course, for the process of ABNs and TFNs. And again, once that ABN has been issued, you can then push that data back into Simple Fund 360 as well. So from that point of view, like I said, I think that the big issue for this month was that change with the T-bar requirement, I should say. And if anyone has any questions off the back of that, obviously happy to answer those. If you do want to find out more about how to get started, you can go and connect your software. You can order on a pay-as-you-go basis. We have document packages that you can access as well. Jeev, I might get you to quickly go across and maybe show people again just how they can go and get that, or where it is in the connections area, and then they can go and order documents. And we have 30 or 40 of those available throughout here that you can access, and then there is specific BGL pricing available to do as well. So you simply connect, and then from there you can go and complete the orders using your what's happening there?
Oh, that's it. I had this issue last on the test site. I had to clear it out before I started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, of course. My issue.
Yeah. So it allows you to basically pull down data to do things like your deed upgrades and your pensions and the like, but equally then push the data back. So that is it. Thank you.
Do that next time, maybe.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Aaron. So just a reminder for everyone too that BGL is running a national roadshow throughout August. So as it says on screen, it's well, I'm showing you wrong. There we go. So it's, as I said on screen, BGL is the biggest event of the year. So you can go to bglregtech.com. Smarter SMSF is one of our gold sponsors and will be, I think, at all the cities. So we're going through to Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, Melbourne, and Hobart. So if you can get into check out the website there, bglregtech.com. It's got the date, it's got the agenda, and you can sort of see. Hopefully, it does meet your requirements and come along. But Aaron, like always, thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you again.
And we'll see everyone next month. So, and as mentioned previously, the recording of today will be available and sent to all attendees. So if there's any sections you missed, feel free to obviously watch the recording and send Aaron and myself through any questions next time. So thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.